Morning spread over Sagefield in a soft, pale gold, the kind of light that made the dust on the road sparkle and turned the low hills into folded linen. A white horse stood in the cool, breathing patiently as swallows stitched the air above the paddock. He was tall and clean-limbed, with a silky forelock and a coat the color of winter milk. The stable hands called him Solace because he quieted people without trying. He did not know the word, but he understood the weight in human shoulders and how it lifted when his warm breath touched an open palm. At the far fence, a girl waited with both hands hooked into the wire. She leaned in like a secret, chin resting on her wrist. Her name was Wren, small for 11, with a braid the color of scrubgrass and a sweater too big for her frame. The sweater's sleeves swallowed her knuckles when she waved. Solace turned, ears flicking toward the rustle of her voice. He walked to the fence and lowered his head until the cool of his muzzle met her skin. "Good morning," Wren whispered. "You look like clean snow today." Solace blinked. He did not think of snow, but he knew her voice, and it loosened something inside him. When the gate latch clicked, he held himself still so the child could press her cheek against his neck. She smelled faintly of laundry soap and apples. Her hands found the rhythm along his shoulder, brushed the hair smooth, pause, breathe, brush again, like the first sound of rain finding the roof. 10 minutes, called Tomas Alvarez, the old groom who had taught 3 towns to trust their own hands again. His voice always sounded like earth. "Before the fancy car comes back." Wren nodded without looking up. 10 minutes was a wide, generous meadow when you measured it in hair and breath and quiet. There was a ritual to her love. She would groom Solace with reverence, curry comb, soft brush, hoof pick, then the square of cheesecloth to polish his face until it shone. She hummed under her breath. Sometimes she spoke, not with the hurry of a child but with the careful pauses of someone who has learned that silence can hold a reply. "I dreamed we went to the creek," she told him. "It was summer there, even if it was winter here, and you walked in and didn't mind the water at all. You stood so still that minnows gathered by your knees." Solace let the brush work its path. He understood this too, people turned their thinking into pictures. He knew to meet pictures with stillness, the way he had learned to face wind, straight on, feet squared, breath steady. The driveway gravel side. Tires hissed to a stop. Sterling Lang stepped out of the black SUV as if the morning owed him interest. His suit was the deep navy of expensive rules, his watch an easy declaration of time having masters. The driver, a tall man with an earbud, opened the back door and stood aside. Wren did not turn to look, she pressed the cheesecloth once more along Solace's cheek, slow as a benediction. "Wren." Sterling's voice was smooth, polished on both sides. "We have 5 minutes." Tomas tipped his hat. "Morning, Mr. Lang." Sterling nodded, distracted, eyes on his phone. "Yes. Good morning. Where is what's his name?" "Solace," Wren said quietly, as if the horse, not her father, might forget. "Solace," Sterling repeated, but he said it like a password he did not plan to use again. He squinted at the paddock, as if trying to understand why anyone would choose to stand in air that smelled plainly of hay and manure when there were buildings that smelled like climate control and money. He glanced at the white horse and the horse glanced back, nothing aggressive, just a steady regard that held. Sterling looked away first. "Do you want to see me brush his tail?" Wren asked, hope stitched into the question like a hidden seam. Sterling checked his watch. "I need 3 calls before we go to the hotel." Then, as if recalling he was supposed to pretend at something softer, he added, "You look nice, Wren." She did not ask for more. She had learned not to. She slid the brush along Solace's flank with unhurried patience, felt the muscle ripple. The horse stepped 1 foot aside to keep his balance, and she smiled. It felt like speaking together in a language without verbs. Beyond the paddock, the town assembled its chores. The bakery's back door banged open. The first trays of bread sent a warm, forgiving scent into the alley where a green industrial dumpster crouched under the shade of an old billboard. The auto shop next door rolled up its bay door, a radio voice laughed and then turned to a ball game recap. A little boy biked past, his tires stamping faint moons into the pale dust. Wren tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and pulled a ribbon from her pocket. It was white with a thin blue edge. She braided it into Solace's forelock, fingers certain. The metal tag at the end, stamped with her initials, caught the sun. WL. When the tag chimed softly against Solace's face, the horse stood even stiller, as if he knew that sometimes the smallest sound was a promise made out loud. Tomas leaned his forearms on the fence. You ride today? Can I just walk him to the apple tree and back? Wren asked. I won't go on the road. Course you can, Tomas said. He'll carry you like glass. Sterling's head lifted. No, he said. Not today. We have to be downtown by 9. The hotel lobby is full of photographers. Investors like that. Tomas's mouth tightened. He'd been watching parents long enough to recognize the shape of a performance. He kept his voice dry. Walking by the apple tree takes less time than the way you said good morning. Wren glanced between them and set the brush down. It's okay. I don't have to. Solace turned his head slightly, nostrils flaring. The scent came from Sterling's sleeve, a cologne sharp as something cut from steel. The horse lifted his chin, then lowered it, placing his face near Wren's shoulder again, the way he did when wind shifted or thunder spoke from far away. Not fear, attention. The difference was as clear to him as day. Wren. Sterling sighed with careful patience, the kind adults use when they attempt to sound kind at a distance. We need to go. Kara will meet us at the hotel. There's a charity luncheon. You'll like the dress. Tomas opened his mouth and closed it. Some bridges you stepped onto and found they were only painted on the ground. He gave Wren a look he had given his daughter when she was small and the world taught her something he wished it wouldn't, a look that said you are seen, even when you are not seen. Wren removed the ribbon from Solace's forelock and slipped it back into her pocket. I'll come tomorrow, she told him. I'll bring the crunchy apples, the ones that sound like little stars when you bite them. Solace exhaled into her hands. The breath warmed her skin. She laughed under it, a sound quick and startled, like a bird finding wind. The driver held the SUV door. Wren climbed in. As the car eased away, she twisted to keep Solace in view. The horse followed the fence and then stopped at the corner, the way he always did, where the ground sloped and the wild barley grew uncut. The SUV turned left past the bakery alley. For a moment the sun flashed on the rear window and then the car slid out of sight. Tomas walked into the paddock and rubbed Solace's neck. She'll be back, he said, because saying it made the sentence more solid in the mouth, and sometimes that tricked a day into behaving better than it had planned. Solace stood with him, facing the driveway. The air had shifted again, nothing dramatic, not a storm or a siren, just a thin thread of gasoline and something sour that trailed from the alley behind the bakery. A garbage truck had been by earlier than usual. Tomas had grumbled about the clatter waking up his old dog. The scent clung in the shade there, near the green dumpster and the stack of flattened boxes that waited for someone with a knife in time. In the SUV, Wren pressed her forehead to the window glass and let the cold steady her. Sterling talked on his phone about numbers that moved whole rooms of other people. When he hung up, he glanced at her reflection. You know I'm doing all this for you, he said, the words practiced. She turned, surprised into a small smile. For me? For your future, he said. The foundation. The hotel launch. The right stories so the world is kinder, you know, to people like you. He said people like you in a way that meant people who cost me something I did not plan to pay. Wren nodded because she had learned that nodding made things shorter. Her throat ached with a quiet she couldn't swallow. Back at the paddock, Solace lowered his head to the ground and breathed along the place her shoes had pressed the dust. The shape of her little boots was still there, two neat ovals, turned slightly inward at the toes. He knew the weight of her and the measure of her step. He knew the exact sound her laugh made inside his chest. He knew the tiny metallic chime her ribbon tag made when she ran. He moved along the fence to the corner again and stood there, watching the road the way a lighthouse watches a channel, not with impatience, but with a commitment that never flinches. The white hair along his jaw tickled in the breeze. A fly landed, he flicked it away with a twitch and went still again. The town went on, brooms across thresholds, water hoses waking dusty flower beds, a church bell lifting once to make sure the day had found its feet. The green dumpster took the heat where it always took it, a metal box doing its one blunt job. No one noticed it except the bakery boy who tied his apron and broke the crust off a roll to eat on the back step. Tomorrow, Tomas said to Salas. She promised apples. Salas did not know the calendar, but he knew the gravity of a child's vow. He stood quiet, eyes on the place where cars became noise and then nothing. Somewhere beyond the hill, the SUV slowed for the light, then turned down toward downtown where the glass hotel made the sky repeat itself. If anyone had asked him, Salas would not have known how to say it, but something thin and taut had begun to hum under the surface of the morning, like a wire plucked far away. He dropped his head and chewed a blade of barley, pretending not to hear it. Later, when shadows lengthened and the bakery boy hosed down the alley and the fly buzzed itself tired, Salas would remember how ordinary this hour had been. How the sun had warmed the fence post and how his own breathing had made a small white cloud in the cool. He would remember the sound of the dumpster lid banging shut, just another noise among 100, and how he had turned his ears, one after the other, to find where the wrongness lived. For now, all he did was wait, patient as stone and just as faithful, a white figure against the pale boards, holding a place open in the day as if holding a door for someone he loved. What came next would ask more of him than standing. It would ask for courage and for the kind of intelligence born from listening to every small thing. He would give it. He would give it because the child had given him a ribbon and a name and a trust that felt like the first drink of water after long dust. And because somewhere in the middle of town, among cameras and glass and suits, a story had already taken its first sharp turn. The quiet had done its part. Now it was time for the hinge to move. The black SUV slid through town like a shadow that did not belong to the morning. Sterling Lang sat in the back seat with his daughter beside him, his eyes fixed on the glowing numbers of his phone screen, while Wren pressed her palms together in her lap. The driver cleared his throat. "Sir, we're still early for the luncheon. Want me to take the long way?" Sterling lifted his head, and for a moment, his expression shifted, something unreadable, darker than the tinted glass around them. "Yes. Turn left at the bakery." The car nosed down the narrow lane where delivery trucks rattled and pigeons scattered. The alley smelled of yeast and iron, the air heavy with heat gathering off the green dumpster crouched against the wall. The bakery boy was inside now, humming as he stacked trays, unaware of what was about to unravel just outside his door. "Dad?" Wren asked softly. "Are we going to meet Kara now?" Sterling's mouth tightened. He put his phone in his pocket and looked at her, not with warmth, but with a calculation, as if she were a puzzle piece that no longer fit the picture he wanted to frame. "You know I've given you everything," he said. "Doctors, tutors, houses that children dream about. But you were supposed to be different. Stronger. Less fragile." The words stung though his voice was calm, almost rehearsed. Wren blinked, confused. She didn't know how to answer, so she whispered, "I can try harder." Sterling's hand brushed the seat once, impatient. "It isn't about trying, Wren. It's about image. And right now, you're a weight I can't carry anymore." The car slowed. The driver's eyes darted to the rearview mirror, uncertain. "Sir?" "Stop here," Sterling ordered. The SUV rolled to a halt by the dumpster, where the alley narrowed into silence. "Out," Sterling said, his voice cold and final. Wren's small hands curled around the seat belt. "What do you mean?" Sterling leaned closer, his cologne sharp, suffocating. "You'll be fine. Someone will find you. People love lost things, don't they? They'll write about you, pity you. Maybe that's the best story you can give the world." The driver shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, this isn't right." Sterling's eyes sliced to him. "Do you enjoy the paycheck I give you?" Then do as I say. The driver swallowed, silent. Sterling unbuckled Wren's belt with one quick tug. The latch snapped open, and before she could protest, his hands lifted her, not with tenderness but with the efficiency of someone discarding paperwork. "Dad, please," her voice cracked. For a split second, his eyes softened, not with love, but with regret that she made a sound that might linger in his memory. Then he opened the SUV door and set her down on the damp asphalt. He turned her shoulders toward the dumpster. The lid creaked when he shoved it open. The smell of stale bread and rot swirled. Sterling pushed her forward. She stumbled, her thin shoes slipping on a patch of wet cardboard. "Climb in," he ordered. Tears blurred her vision. "No, Dad, I'll be good, Climb in," he repeated, sharper this time. His voice had no room for children, only transactions. When she hesitated, his hand caught her arm, and with one swift motion, he lifted her into the gaping metal box. The clang of her small body landing against the trash echoed louder than it should have in the quiet alley. Her knees scraped against something jagged, the pain blooming hot. She cried out, but Sterling shut the lid halfway, enough to trap the smell in her voice. The driver whispered, "Sir, someone might see." "No one looks at dumpsters," Sterling snapped. "That's the point." Inside, Wren's heart pounded like a bird's wings against a cage. She pressed her palms against the slim crack of light above, her ribbon slipping from her pocket, tumbling into the sour heap below. The tiny tag with her initials glinted once before sinking into shadow. Sterling adjusted his tie as if he had only set down a briefcase. He tapped the roof of the SUV, and the driver, pale and rigid, pulled away. The alley grew quiet again. But not empty. From the far end of the street, where the bakery's fence broke into a field path, Salas stood. He had followed the SUV, not at a gallop but at a measured, relentless walk, his hooves striking the dirt in a steady rhythm. He had watched the black car stop where no child should be set down. He had seen Sterling's arm guide Wren's small frame toward the green metal box. Now, as the sound of the SUV's engine faded, Salas stood in the open, ears pricked, nostrils flaring at the sour sweet scent that leaked from the dumpster. His eyes fixed on the spot where the girl's ribbon had vanished. The world had shifted. The air carried the weight of betrayal, sharp and sour as rust. Salas understood in the way animals do, that something sacred had been broken. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over the alley bricks. Wren was inside, muffled cries barely reaching the morning light. And the horse had seen everything. The alley behind the bakery was still, save for the faint drip of water from a rusted pipe. The green dumpster squatted in the shade, lid trembling as Wren's small fists pushed against it, her muffled cries barely escaping the iron stink of rot. No one came. Not the baker with his flour-dusted hands. Not the boy with his bicycle. But Salas came. The white horse stood at the mouth of the alley, his sides lifting with steady breath. He had followed the black SUV because something in the girl's absence had pulled at him like a missing note in a song. Now, as he drew closer, his ears twitched toward the faintest sound, her voice, thin and broken, rising through metal. He lowered his head to the ground, sniffing. The sour stench burned his nostrils, but beneath it he caught the trace of her, the apple-sweet scent of her hair, the ribbon she had carried. He pawed the ground once, hard enough that dust rose. Inside, Wren pressed her cheek against the cold metal wall. She heard it, the scrape of hooves on stone. Her heart leapt. "Salas," she cried, her voice cracking. "Please." The horse's body jolted at the sound. He swung his head toward the dumpster and stepped forward until his shadow covered the lid. He pressed his nose against the edge, nudging it, testing the weight. The lid creaked but did not give. He tried again, harder this time, pushing with the blunt strength of his skull. The metal shrieked, shifting an inch. Wren gasped inside, hope burning against fear. But Salas was no magician. He could not lift the heavy lid alone. He stepped back, nostrils flaring, muscles tense with thought. His ears flicked left, then right. A sound carried on the wind, hammering from the blacksmith's shed, voices from the courthouse square. People were near, yet far enough not to hear a child in a box. Salas turned, eyes narrowing. He knew what he had to do. He broke into a trot, hooves striking the cobblestones of town with sharp intent. Townsfolk looked up as the white figure thundered past, his mane streaming, his body cutting through the morning like a warning bell. "Juniper's horse," someone shouted. "Where's the girl?" "He never runs loose," another cried. Salas swerved toward the sheriff's office. Sheriff Caldwell had just stepped outside, coffee steaming in his hand, when the horse barreled toward him, stopping so abruptly dust clouded the air. The sheriff stumbled back. "What in blazes?" Salas reared, striking the air, then dropped heavily to all fours, shaking his head violently toward the alley. He stomped once, twice, snorted, then spun in a tight circle. His eyes blazed, his entire frame trembling with urgency. The sheriff blinked, startled. He had seen horses spook, bolt, shy from shadows, but this was not fear. This was insistence. Tomas Alvarez came running from the livery, hat in hand. "That's Salas." "Something's wrong." He grabbed the reins, but Salas jerked free and galloped a few steps toward the alley, then turned back, stomping the ground as if saying, "Follow me." Caldwell narrowed his eyes. He wasn't a man to chase animal tricks, but Tomas put a hand on his arm. "Sheriff, that horse belongs to Ren Lang. If he's running wild, the girl's in trouble." That name cut through the morning. Everyone in Sagefield knew the Lang family, knew the polished billionaire who had built glass hotels and factories that smelled of steel. And they knew the girl, quiet, small, often seen more with animals than people. "All right," Caldwell muttered, setting his coffee aside. "Let's see where he leads." Salas spun and bolted, the sheriff and Tomas following close. Two deputies, curious, fell in behind. The horse did not slow. He threaded the main street, past the bakery's open doors, past the butcher's shop, until he reached the narrow alley. There he stopped, sides heaving, and thrust his muzzle toward the dumpster. He reared once more, hooves striking sparks against the cobblestones. Tomas's heart dropped. "Dear Lord!" The sheriff and deputies rushed forward. The faint sound of a child's sob rose as they shoved the lid open. The smell hit them first, sour bread, old grease, but then, through it, the sight, Ren, trembling, her knees scraped raw, her rib entangled in trash. Her wide eyes blinked at the sudden light. "Sheriff, help!" Caldwell lifted her gently, his jaw tight with fury. "Got you, little one. You're safe now." Tomas laid a trembling hand on her hair, whispering, "Salas wouldn't leave you." The horse stood a few steps away, ears forward, watching with a fierce stillness. His body seemed to swell with both relief and defiance. Caldwell wrapped his coat around Ren. "Who put you here?" he asked softly. Ren's lips trembled. She looked down at the ground, as if ashamed to say. But her eyes lifted to the street where the SUV had gone, and a single name broke from her throat, hoarse but clear. "Dad." The deputies exchanged looks. Tomas swore under his breath. Caldwell's eyes hardened like stone. He turned to Salas, who pawed the ground once more, as if demanding justice himself. The sheriff nodded grimly. "Then justice we'll have." The town square had never been so still. The sheriff carried Ren in his arms, her small frame wrapped in his coat, while Tomas and the deputies followed close. Salas walked beside them, head lowered but eyes watchful, as if he knew the weight of what he had delivered. People gathered as words spread faster than dust in the wind. Mothers with aprons still dusted with flour, shopkeepers leaning on doorframes, children clutching their parents' hands, they all turned to watch. A girl had been pulled from the trash, and it was not just any girl. It was Ren Lang, daughter of the richest man in 3 counties. The sheriff set her gently on the steps of the courthouse, his hand steady at her back. "You're safe, sweetheart," he said softly. Then, louder, "Deputy, get the doctor." Ren nodded, but her lips quivered as she tried to speak. He put me there." The sheriff bent down. Who, Wren? Her eyes brimmed with tears. She swallowed hard, as if the name itself could burn her tongue. But she whispered it anyway. My father. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others looked grim, their suspicions confirmed. At that very moment, the black SUV rolled into the square, its polished sides gleaming under the morning sun. Sterling Lang stepped out, adjusting his tie, his smile ready-made for cameras. He hadn't expected to find half the town staring at him with cold eyes. Wren, he said, his tone rehearsed concern. Why are you? But the words stuck when he saw her wrapped in Caldwell's coat, dirt streaking her cheeks, blood marking her scraped knees. The sight was wrong. Uncontrolled. Dangerous. Sheriff, he said quickly, voice smooth, what's the meaning of this? Caldwell straightened to his full height. Meaning is simple, Mr. Lang. Your daughter was found in a dumpster behind the bakery. And she says you put her there. Sterling's eyes flicked over the crowd, searching for allies, but found none. He chuckled, brittle as glass. A child's imagination. She doesn't. He stopped. Because just then, Salas stepped forward. The horse's great body cast a shadow across Sterling, his mane catching the light. He fixed his dark eyes on the man who had betrayed the girl he guarded. And hanging from Salas's forelock, tangled in his hair, was the ribbon Wren had dropped in the dumpster, the tiny tag with WL glinting like a witness sworn before the court. A murmur rose. People leaned closer. Sterling's face drained of color. He hadn't noticed when the horse had nudged the lid, when his muzzle dipped and caught the ribbon. He hadn't thought that an animal could carry proof stronger than any word. Tomas's voice cracked like a whip. He saw you, Lang. This horse followed your car. He knew where she was when no one else did. And he pulled us straight to her. The crowd erupted, shouts of shame and monster, mixed with the raw silence of those two horrified to speak. Sterling raised his hands, trying to contain it. You can't believe an animal. It's absurd. But the sheriff cut him off. It's not just the horse. It's your daughter's word. And it's the driver's. All eyes turned. The driver, pale and shaken, had stepped from the SUV. His lips trembled, but he forced the words out. It's true. I saw it. He ordered me to stop. He made her climb in. I didn't stop him. God forgive me. A gasp rolled through the square like thunder. Sterling's mask cracked. His charm, his polish, his empire of appearances, all of it fractured in the face of truth. His voice rose, desperate, ugly. Do you know who I am? I built this town's jobs, your homes, your... Caldwell raised a hand, silencing him. And you tried to throw away your own child like trash. That's all anyone will remember. The sheriff turned to his deputies. Arrest him. The crowd pressed closer, some spitting curses, others weeping for the girl. Sterling struggled, shouting, but the cuffs clicked around his wrists with finality. His empire of glass towers could not protect him here, under the plain sky, where the truth had been dragged out into daylight by a horse and a child's trembling voice. Wren shrank into Tomas's arms, sobbing softly, her face buried against his shoulder. Why, Tomas? Why doesn't he want me? The old groom's eyes blurred with tears. Because some men are rich in gold but bankrupt in heart. Don't you dare think it's your fault, Nina. You are worth more than all his towers. Salas stepped close, pressing his muzzle against her small back. She turned and clung to his neck, her tears dampening his coat. The horse did not move. He stood as he always had, still, steady, an anchor against the storm. The crowd fell into silence, humbled by the sight, a child who had been discarded, held now by a horse who would never let her go. It was not the sheriff's words, nor the cuffs on Sterling Lang, that gave the moment its power. It was the quiet bond between girl and horse, shining like a truth too simple to deny. And in that silence, the twist was clear to all: justice had not come from money or men in suits, but from a horse who refused to look away. The courthouse bell rang noon as Sterling Lang was led away in handcuffs, his protests drowned beneath the steady murmur of townsfolk. Some called for justice, others simply turned their faces away, unwilling to grant him even the dignity of their attention. For all his money and power, he looked small now, swallowed by the weight of his own choices. But the square's true focus was not on him. It was on the girl he had tried to discard, and the horse who had refused to let her vanish. A gentle rescue. Dr. Marlowe, gray-bearded and steady-handed, knelt by Wren on the courthouse steps. He cleaned the scrapes on her knees, wrapping them in linen bandages. "Nothing broken," he said gently. "She's tougher than she looks." Wren held still, clutching Tomas's sleeve with one hand and Salas's mane with the other. Her cheeks were streaked with drying tears, but her eyes no longer carried only fear. There was something else there now, the fragile glow of being seen, truly seen. "She'll stay with me tonight," Tomas said firmly. "No more hotels, no more glass towers. Just a warm fire, a bed, and supper." The sheriff nodded. "Court will decide what's to come, but I reckon the town already knows who'll keep her safe." Salas blew a warm breath over Wren's hair, as if sealing the agreement. The town's answer. By evening, word had spread across Sagefield. Women brought loaves of bread, jars of soup, quilts stitched from scraps of old dresses. Men stacked firewood by Tomas's door, mended the fence where Salas slept, fixed the shutters against the wind. No one said it outright, but everyone understood. A child once thrown away would now be lifted by many hands. That night, Wren sat by the hearth in Tomas's modest home, Salas just beyond the window, his white shape visible under the lantern's glow. Tomas laid a steaming bowl before her. "Eat, Nina. Tomorrow will be better." She spooned broth slowly, the taste of herbs and kindness warming her. For the first time in months, her shoulders uncurled. She glanced at the window, where Salas's ears flicked at every sound. She whispered, "He saved me, Tomas." The old groom nodded, eyes glistening. "Yes. Because love remembers. Even when people forget." A new morning. Days passed. Sterling Lang faced trial, his empire crumbling under the weight of scandal. But for Wren, the world was no longer measured in courtrooms or hotel lobbies. It was measured in morning walks with Salas, in apple slices shared under the paddock tree, in laughter that sounded more and more like freedom. One Sunday, the townsfolk gathered in the square. They had built something unexpected, a bronze plaque fixed to the paddock gate. The words read simply, "To Salas, who reminded us what loyalty means." Wren stood beside the horse, her hand resting on his neck. The sheriff raised his hat, Tomas wiped at his eyes, and the crowd clapped softly, reverently. Salas flicked his tail and lowered his head, unbothered by honors, content only that the girl was smiling again. The lesson. That night, as stars dusted the dark sky, Wren sat on the porch steps with Salas standing guard beside her. She pressed her cheek against his shoulder and whispered, "I thought I was nothing. I thought maybe he was right." The horse shifted, steady and silent. "But you didn't let me disappear. You showed them. You showed me." She closed her eyes. "I'll never forget." Tomas, watching from the doorway, spoke softly into the quiet. "Child, money can build walls, but it cannot build love. Love is built in the small things, an apple slice, a hand on a mane, a horse that will not turn away." The fireflies blinked in the grass, and the night hummed with crickets. And so the story closed not with Sterling Lang's disgrace, but with a girl who found her worth in the eyes of a horse, and a town that learned again what justice looks like when people choose compassion over silence. Final line. Sometimes it takes the loyalty of a simple creature to remind us of the truth. No life is disposable, and love is the only wealth that cannot be abandoned.